Hello,
Hi,
Hello.
I am Haley,
I am Amy.
And I'm Lori.
and welcome to a very spooktacular edition of Hugo Girl, the podcast where we read Hugo Award-winning novels and other similar things.
Stuff.
Sometimes Hugo-nominated novels, sometimes comfort reads, good stuff. So, this month for October, we read The Uninvited by Dorothy Macardle. Known as Uneasy Freehold in the UK when it was published in 1942, it was nominated for a Retro Hugo for Best Novel of 1944 in 2018. Fun fact, the next year's Retro Hugo of 1945 would go on to be won by The Conjure Wife, which we read last Halloween.
Oh. Hey, ladies.
That was fun.
Yeah, that was real fun. I made those little flannel hands.
I found that the other day. I took my eyeglass case when we went on a trip to Washington, and I don't go anywhere, so I don't normally need my eyeglass case. And then I got it to pack my glasses, and there was a little flannel hand in there, keeping me safe on my journey.
There was a little flannel hand in my Dragon Con Halloween box when I pulled it out.
Aw.
I was like, flannel hand.
I have no idea where mine is. Like most things in my life, it ends up in the backseat of my car, so it's probably there.
Well, wherever it is, it's keeping you safe.
You should just be gratified that your little charms are still with us.
Indeed.
They're keeping us safe.
That's my witchy point that I was trying to, all right, let's get started with the plot summary. So, Pamela and Roddy are siblings seeking to escape the hustle and bustle of London. He is an aspiring playwright, and she has previously nursed their dying father for many years prior to his passing. This reminds me all of the character of Eleanor from The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. She's been taking care of her sick, angry mother for forever, so that's probably where Shirley got that idea from. Maybe, I don't know.
Or just the fact that daughters had to do that all the time.
just happened.
Men get to go off and just be intellectual, and women have to stay home and work, so yeah. They find a gorgeous old house in the west of England by the sea called Cliff End, and though it's rumored to have had some disturbances, they buy it from very grumpy Commander Brooke for a very low price. They move in with their cook/housekeeper Lizzie and her orange cat Whiskey, and for the first part of the book, it's a wonderfully wholesome montage of painting, building, laughing, and eating. They meet Commander Brooke's granddaughter, Stella, and instantly are taken to her, even though she's an 18-year-old girl and they're adults. Then the shrieking and crying start. Cold spots and nausea on the staircase, wilting flowers, that sort of thing. They learn from town gossip about the drama that went down 15 years before. Stella's dad, Meredith, and her mom, Mary, had a real messed up relationship. Mary died after falling. Well, did they both die after falling? I forget.
Mary died from falling. Carmel died from pneumonia neglect
That's
a few
right,
days
yeah.
later. And then the husband died a couple of years later.
Yeah, he died three years later at sea. Many in the village blame this tumultuous turn of events on Carmel, the younger Spanish servant girl that Meredith was in love with and had come live with them.
She was his model.
Yes, model because he was a painter. Yeah,
And then they kept saying an artist model.
or mannequin. I think I saw once, which was weird. So the hauntings continue, and the family tries to figure out everyone's unfinished business. They're not sure which ghost is which. They hold seances and call on their friend Ingram to do some ghost busting. He reminded me of Otho from Ghostbusters. They avail the village priest, too, and the Dr. Scott, a local physician, for help. It gets a little bit complicated towards the end. The book wraps up with some pretty spectacular melodrama and plot twists, and ends on a very happy note, which I like for a scary story.
Yeah.
So that is a spoiler-free plot review.
I don't know if I want... I like the twist in this book so much.
It's
It's going to be hard not to talk about
I
it.
know.
So just
I
large spoiler alert.
Yeah, I feel like if you are planning to read this, don't listen. And it hurts my heart to say, don't listen. Look, what I want you to do is don't hit stop, but take out your earbuds, let it play to the end so I get to see the download number. But then you haven't been spoiled, so we both get what we need. And then go read the book.
It's a transaction, pure and simple. Okay, so goodies from Goodreads. This was interesting. So most people like this book. It's a good book. I was annoyed with the number of people that took to Goodreads just to review the movie. But I guess some people don't like to read. So I just, it's like they were doing a book report on the movie on the Goodreads page. But my favorite review was from Isacradia. And she said, I suspect that you would need to be a more ghostly person than I am to enjoy this book to the full. I don't mind a haunted house as a motif, but I like my uncanny presences to be barely sketched, as in the short stories of Hoffman or M.R. James, or possibly Walter de la Mare, whom Macardle intriguingly name checks here as an influence. That's pretentious.
Yeah, those guys.
Yeah. Once spirits are out in the open and the mechanics of haunting come under scrutiny, my interest rather wanes.
Oh, rather Wayne's does it.
Did Roddy write this? So that was my favorite one. The rest were kind of lukewarm. So
Yeah, most of them were either I really liked the book or I thought it was boring. I have one that I thought was funny. This is from Amazon, and it was a 3-star review, and it says, "This story is wonderful." And I thought, why 3 stars? And then they go on to say, "I gave it 3 stars because of the binding."
I saw that one.
It is shown as a black cover, classic tooling, a very nice look. The copy I received is a plummy burgundy with a very cartoonish ghost wearing a goofy grin. Anyone seeing this copy will think it is a child's book. Very disappointing.
Wow, the people that take to these reviews are very fancy.
Lynette on Goodreads pointed out something that I was bugged about, because this book is written by a woman, and so there's a lot of weird little misogynistic things in the book that I can't decide if she's doing that to make a point, which we'll get to this, but I couldn't decide if she's doing it to make a point or if it was just sort of some sort of internalized thing, or if an editor got a hold of it. Couldn't tell. But Lynette pointed out, well, she says she gave it 3 stars, and she says the characters were unlikable and the book was creepy for all the wrong reasons. The narrator falls in love with a woman he continually refers to as a child. Ugh. And there's so much that has absolutely nothing to do with the story, but goes on for pages and pages. Lots of women getting ill after a fright. Ugh, again, I just didn't enjoy this book. The women getting ill after a fright was something that really bothered me this whole time. They all have to take to their bed, but Roddy just carries on.
I would definitely have to take to my bed if I saw a full-on ghost.
Well, I'm fine with it if Roddy also had to take to his bed, but he didn't.
He does faint at the end.
That's true.
He does full-on faint, and Pamela saves the day.
That's true.
Yeah. So I think this is a good time to jump into plot points or just discussion points. So my first question for you guys is, did you think this book was scary?
I don't think so. I don't think I thought it was scary.
No. So my thoughts on it are this. I watched the trailer of the film version, and it's a 1940s trailer, so it's very different from the ones we see today. There's no like explosions or cuts or jump scares, but they show lots of dark rooms and dark staircases and candlelit scenes, and then they depict the sound of like the crying, and I don't think that's scary. I think it's uncomfortable. But
if it was my house and I was trying to go to bed and there was disembodied crying going on in my home, it would be fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
It's hard, I think, unless it's done really, really well, it's hard to sort of read that or see it on TV and know what it would feel like, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess
it requires a little more imagery, I think, or something. But
yeah, so
it's a scary idea, though.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And they're not very scared. Pamela and Roddy are
they're annoyed.
Interested, confused, frustrated, but they're not really, most of the time, they're not really scared.
Yeah, that's true. They're bothered. I mean, they can't sleep very well, and they're like bothered by it, I think, at most.
Yeah. I think the scariness didn't work for me because I didn't know the house well enough. Like in a lot of scary, especially haunted house movies, like the house is so important. Like, and you get to live in it and like see it, and it helps contribute to like this air of creepiness. And the yellow room was described, and it's the room that they don't go into, and it's the nursery. That was creepy, but I needed the house to be more of a character, I think. But you can't do that in a book as well as in a movie. So.
I thought she tried to do that in the beginning, because they have a full-on tour of the house in the beginning when they're going around. Because they drive around, they're looking for a house, can't find anything they want. They stumble upon this house, and then they get the keys from the commander, and they go wandering around in the house, and they describe every room. And then they describe the architectural features, and they describe all this stuff. And then they're redoing it, and they're putting all the things up. So I think she tried. Yeah. Maybe she didn't succeed as much as necessary, but
the house isn't spooky either. Yeah. There's nothing ominous about the house, and you wouldn't buy a house if you might, but that's not what they were looking for. They were looking for their sunny seaside cottage, and this is very much that. Whenever I imagine it, like in my head, I'm seeing like bright white paint, lots of sunlight, big windows,
crab pillows. It's a beach house.
It's not a spooky house until you try to go to bed at night and hear, like Amy said, disembodied sobbing.
They had the scary tree. That was about it.
That was a scary tree. That on
scary tree.
That on the cover of some of the novels looks like a woman, because of course.
Yeah, I never found myself afraid of the book, I guess.
Yeah.
It was
a Stephen King.
Creepy, I guess, at times, but not like I didn't have a hard time going to sleep after I put it down.
It's more like a mystery.
It is. Yeah.
I think that's apt. It reads a lot more like a mystery than a ghost
And I liked
story.
being in like their spooky mindset and the idea of like, a ghost, but it wasn't like a traditional haunted house. There wasn't like the creaking stairs and then and the ghosts, they talk a lot about how like, and Roddy fully believes, like he's probably on the fence about ghosts, but he's like, he keeps saying that like emotions get trapped in places, and I think that's a big part of ghosts, maybe. So
I like. They were trying. He was trying so hard to draw a distinction between a haunting with actual ghosts and just stuff that carries an emotion in it, that
an energetic impression
emanates. Yeah. I was like, well, what's the difference, Roddy?
He's just drawing a line in the sand.
He was drawing a very strange line in the sand.
One's rational and one's not.
So in 2011, when I had a fling with a hairdresser, we bonded over books immediately, which was kind of like the spur of our relationship. And she got me to read this book called The Sea by Iris Murdoch.
Oh, I've read that.
Yeah, from 1978. It's about a retired playwright who moves to the coast of England to be a hermit and write his memoirs. Lots of musing and swimming, or bathing, as the Brits call it, which is very weird. Detailed meal making and obsession over lost love. So I had a lot of flashbacks to reading that, although this was better, I think. So,
I like Iris Murdoch a lot.
Before I started reading this book, Lori had finished it, as is the case for almost every book that we read.
Well, I got my Kobo for my birthday, and I got excited, and I wanted to buy something.
Yes.
So I bought it.
And she was telling me how much I would love it. And there's so much discussion of food. And I figured we would talk about that. Because I obviously love to read about food. It's one of my favorite things to read about. And but why is there so much food?
There's so much food.
It's weird food.
We almost eat with them in real time. Like, the book really takes place almost in real time. Like, sometimes there's some time jumps between chapters where he's like, we had a quiet week. But then, like, when we are reading, it's like minute by minute with them. Like, we get breakfast, we get lunch, we get tea, we get dinner, we get supper.
Midnight meals.
They eat so much.
Lots of scones.
And I feel like maybe she uses it as, like, I'm going to get all English major in this. Like, maybe as a transition when you get back into, like, so it's almost immediately after every possession, there's like, oh, man, I'm so hungry. Do y'all want some scrambled eggs? Like, maybe it's a way to get back to, like, the corporeal needs of the body. I think a better title for this book would have been Scrambled Eggs After Possession.
It might also be sort of a way of building tension because, you know, as you go through the day, like, nothing really happens during the day in this book. So you're eating, you go through the meal. And then by the time you get to that, you're getting to those last ones, you kind of know it's coming. And it's like, what's going to happen
That's
next?
true. Well, it's like on vacation, you're always just like, as soon as you have breakfast, you're like, what's for lunch? Then what's for dinner?
That's true.
Another thing
vacation
too
is just planning meals.
Well, that is what, I mean, life is like that. Especially during the pandemic, I realized, like, we eat 7,000 times a day. Mm-hmm. Like, when it is less mindless, like when I'm at work and I'm eating my lunch at my desk or something, I just, like, go grab some takeout. But when I'm at home, I don't know, if I just felt more involved with my food, and I almost felt exhausted by it. Like last year when I was trying to cook all the time, and, you know, when you couldn't get takeout and everything was closed, and I was just like, oh, we have to eat again.
Yeah, my body never stops.
I think it's, like, true. We do eat all the time. And then something I liked about it, I read recently the first in the Witcher series. So Witcher's interesting. It has, like, some numbered books, and, like, number 1 in the series is the first one that was published, but then I guess he published some prequels later that you're supposed to read first. But anyway, I read number 1. I read Blood of Elves, and the book is all dialogue. It's really weird.
It's like a play.
It is. There's almost no narration. It is people talking, and it is people talking in paragraphs.
Oh, wow.
And I was reading it, and I was like, I can't believe these were so popular. Now, I mean, he's a Polish author, and it became super popular in Poland. Maybe that's a different narrative style and tradition. I don't know. But for me, I was like, oh, gosh, you don't even get a, like, she nodded. You know, you don't even get that. It's just, like, walls of dialogue. So I really like this by contrast because you're talking, and there's one that I made a note of early in the book when Roddy goes to pick up some eggs from Mrs. Jessup, the neighbor.
The 6 eggs for breakfast that were needed?
Yes, and she's talking at him for so long before she's like, oh, yeah, I'll have Charlie bring your stuff by later. But he says when she's gossiping, he says, Mrs. Jessup was shaping up her butter with wooden pats while she was talking to him about the previous tenants who she thought were lazy sluts. Yeah. And then he said, the way she slapped up her butter was more eloquent than words. And it's just, like, so evocative to imagine her basically beating up this butter as she's talking about people she doesn't like. So that's something I really liked about all the food and the meals and everything. It just really made me able to vividly imagine things in a way that I often don't when I'm reading a book. But I could really see that tea tray. Like, by the end of the book, I was like, I need a tea trolley. I need one.
Well, it's like, you know, in Star Wars, they don't eat anything ever. All right. So, like, I mean, it does bring an element of humanity, you know, into life because we eat so much every day. Every single human on this entire planet. It doesn't matter if it's lentils or cow parts or junk food. Like, we're all eating something. So
that kind of reminded me just what you were saying a minute ago. Is just sort of the book's not great, I think, at fully fleshing out all the characters, but I do think she has a gift for those little interactions. Like every time he runs into somebody in town, or
the Jessops,
or they go to see Miss Holloway, or like there's all these little interactions, these little descriptions of their responses to one another and stuff like that are really really good.
Feel authentic.
Yeah, and like I remember one, I think it might have been that same one when he was talking to Miss Jessup, but like he shows up, it's either her or maybe the woman who owns the pub or something, I can't remember exactly, but he shows up and she's very clipped and quick with him, and she wants him to leave. And then when she finds out that he's the owner of Cliff End, suddenly she was a woman of leisure with nothing to do but talk to him. And it was just a really interesting, it was just a cute way of describing like that change to, oh, I could get some information out of you.
Yeah. I like it when Lizzie, so there's obviously like a social class distinction between, Lizzie and then the siblings, but like when she, so much of the book is like sending her away to be safe from the ghost. Yeah. So it's like she's going Jessoping to hang out with like the other country people. Okay, so Lori, do you still have on your phone the notes with all those random descriptions? Like, she wore a large vest. Remember when the description of words we did for like, yeah.
Oh!
Because I would now like to talk about Mrs. Holloway and the queer-coded villainy that's in this book.
I'm sure I do.
Okay.
Let me search my...
We'll just pause for a second.
I'm going to lead into this by saying that Roderick falls in love with Stella. Stella, in theory, falls back in love with Roderick, but it is quite clear to me that Stella was in love with Pamela.
So apparently, I read an Autostraddle article about all the queerness in this movie, which, the book is, every female character is a lesbian.
Yeah.
Including Pam. And I watched
obviously.
I watched the first 10 minutes of the movie, and like Pam is very butch. Like,
well, and she's like 25 and she's not married.
And he's like, I sometimes wonder if she'll ever get married.
Yeah, because because when you buy a house with your brother, like you do.
Well, I read basically every character in their social circle as gender fluid. Like, one of their best guy friends is like a set designer, and he's like, and you should put these velvet curtains in this color. And like, it was just like not what I would expect from like a man in 1944. But they were like, all of them are artistes.
They're all artistes. I loved how good their friends were to them, and like they were just good friends.
I like these people, and I guess like
that's nice in a book.
I read some things about like a lack of character development, and I'm not sure. I mean,
there's no huge arc.
I'm really sure I disagree. Like, I feel like I know them pretty well by the end of the book.
They're painted in fairly broad strokes, I think. I also get them. I liked the characters.
I liked them too.
You just don't get a lot of some of their you only get Roderick's inner world, I guess. And so you don't really get to know the other characters.
But I love how well he seems to know Pamela.
That's true.
I like their relationship as siblings. He's so supportive of her, too. He's never like, I'll never marry her off. He's just like, I wonder if she'll get married someday. Yeah. Probably not. Let's get a house. Like, he just seems like not well. And I think what he said was that he felt sorry for like the spouse that she won't have, that wouldn't get to like have her as a spouse, which is like a nice thing. That he's like, she'd be a really great partner, but like she doesn't want that, but it's kind of too bad because she'd be a great partner. I really like their relationship and their friendship, and they're so gossipy together too. I love that when they're on the phone and they call their friends the Careys, and they didn't know that they'd gotten married, and they call and they ask for Peter, and the housekeeper is like, oh, Mrs. Carey is in, and he covers the phone, and he's like, who can it be? He hasn't got a cent. Who could be Mrs. Carey? It's so funny. I love their dynamic.
Yeah. Okay, so Mrs. Holloway.
I found the list, by the way.
Okay, so, all right. Here's why I think she's a queer-coded villain. I have the case against the state versus... She runs some sort of scammy essential oil nursing home. And she tells the siblings that she believes the haunting spirit to be Carmel because Mary was a saint. And let me tell you what she thinks about Mary. Well, first let's talk about the physical description of Ms. Holloway. Her large hands lay on the polished table. She's very cold. She sets a timer to talk to them for precisely 40 minutes because that's all she has time for. She's busy. She's tall. She says, okay, so this is where she starts to talk about Mary. I sacrificed 10 years of my career to complete the work that Mary had begun. That was my tribute to my martyred friend. I knew Mary as no one else ever knew her. And then somebody asked the question, like, did Mary agree with you about this? And she goes, our minds were as one. At one point, Pamela questions Mary's motives about something, and Miss Holloway goes, Mary would be incomprehensible to you. Towards the end of the encounter, she becomes more brusque and very, very masculine and aggressive in her interactions. And then I'm not sure if Roddy does this or if like the narration goes, she's referred to as a virago, which is one of my favorite words for like an old battle axe.
Oh, I didn't know what that was.
And then I think it's in the book, but I don't remember this part. But in the movie, she definitely keeps a portrait of Mary like in her bedroom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we see you.
So Miss Holloway was just like, ooh. Yeah. So that's my case for the queer-coded villainy. I didn't write it down, but there's lots of academic speculations and discussions about like queer horror villainy in the world, and it's
interesting.
Worth the Google.
It is interesting,
but
like, all the Disney villains.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Scar,
Ursula.
Jafar.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just in case people haven't read the book and they have disregarded our admonitions to not listen before they read the book, Mrs. Holloway is friends with Mary Meredith, who is Stella's mother. Mary Meredith was the person who lived in the house before Roddy and Pamela bought it. And they're trying to figure out why Mary is haunting him. They go see Mrs. Holloway in Bristol to go talk to her about Mary.
And she is not a nice lady.
So I picture her kind of like Mrs. Trunchbull, but thinner from Matilda. And she's got like a very severe, pulled back, tight, dark bun. She's got like a black, skinny thing.
Yeah.
Oh, she's like the familiar in the Baron's familiar from Under the Shadow.
Yes.
Just very severe.
So he's lurking there.
Definitely did not take the vaccine.
So there's a note on Lori's phone from
October 1st, 2017.
From years ago.
I can't believe it was so long ago.
4 years and a couple of days.
Yeah, before the podcast. There might have been like a Toast article about it, but like there's a lot of different like euphemisms for lesbians or queer people in pop culture, especially like olden times. So let's read some of them.
Did we make these up?
We made these up.
Did we make them up or did we read them?
No,
I don't know.
We made them up.
I just found this, so I was like,
we were spouting them off, and then we got quiet, and Lori just kept writing.
Well, because I think like one of the classic ones, and I think about this once a week at least, is like she wears comfortable shoes.
Yeah.
Like
I
euphemisms.
just cannot remember this at all. And I found the note on my phone a couple months ago, and I was like, well, this is obviously euphemisms for lesbians. but I have like no memory of it. Okay.
There's a trend going around on TikTok right now where it's stitch this with the most unhinged note on your phone. So this would definitely.
Oh yeah. So do you want me to just read these?
Yeah, let's just read some.
Okay.
So these are euphemisms for queer people.
Well, so the title of the note is stoop crone, which is from Kimmy Schmidt.
Oh yeah.
So I think we were coming up with like synonyms for stoop crone.
Oh,
I think maybe it was something like that, but they do sort of sound. They definitely sound like 1940s literary euphemisms. Okay. Notary public.
It makes no sense, but it makes perfect sense.
Headmistress.
Yes.
Ooh, yeah.
Reference librarian.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Matriarch. Callback to Game of Thrones septa. Midwife, fishwife, and alewife.
Any wife.
And I guess if we want to also do Game of Thrones, salt wife.
Oh, salt wife.
Although actually your salt wife was like your side piece, so that probably doesn't make a lot of sense unless it's Yara's side piece.
This is how gay I am. I like all these.
Governess. Maiden aunt.
Ooh.
Yep. I'm saving my favorite for last.
Okay.
Drudge. Charwoman, which is
what was the book we read that had
The
so many
Drudge.
drudges in it?
Was that the last one?
I don't know. Whenever I hear Drudge, I think of Daisy from Downton Abbey.
It was Dragon Rider.
Oh,
or Dragon,
yeah.
The Drudges in the kitchen. Yeah.
Okay, Charwoman, which appears in this book. Mm-hmm. Laundress. Typesetter. I did not do this. Typesetter? Ladies' maid. Which is kind of Mrs. Holloway was kind of a ladies' maid.
Yeah,
we may have been drinking during this list.
Schoolmarm.
Yes.
Dowager.
Oh yeah.
Landlady. And my personal favorite, shirt and trousers.
I'm gonna write an erotic novel called The Landlady.
The landlady, a real shirt and trousers type, if you know what I mean.
And then in the movie, you'll cast two straight ladies.
It'll be Kate Blanchett as the landlady.
Well, because some of these nouns are mysterious and kind of sexy. Like
Notary public?
Well, no, I said some, not all, but like governess and matriarch.
Sexy.
But like landlady is not.
Shirt and trousers. You know what I think of when I hear shirt and trousers? Idgy Threadgood.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, technically, when I lived on North Avenue, my landlady lived downstairs, but it was not sexy. She was in her 60s.
Did she wear shirt and trousers?
She did.
Women in their 60s can be sexy, Haley.
I know, certainly, but this one was not.
So yeah, I still don't know where that list came from.
All right. The other thing I want to talk to y'all about, and I also have an anecdote. The ghost is accompanied by a scent, and it is a scent of mimosa, which is a type of tree, and it's also a beverage. What does it smell like?
I pictured it smelling citrusy, but I don't know why. Probably because of mimosas.
Orange juice is citrus.
Me too.
Yeah.
So,
but I don't know what it smells like.
We all know that scent is one of the closest ties to memory, like there's like next to it in the brain or something. And this reminded me in 1993, my family had sold our house to my dad's partner. He's a cop, like a cop partner. And because of closing dates, he and his wife, or girlfriend at the time, stayed with us for like 2 weeks. And they moved into my room. So it was my mom and dad, my sister and I, and then Mark and his girlfriend Jan. And she wore Red Door, which is like a really strong 90s perfume. It's not good. Mm-hmm. And it was awful. It was everywhere, super cloying. And one of the nights they stayed there, I got really sick off fried rice. And I threw up all night, like just bleh. And I was so sick. And then, but for years afterwards, because they left like a couple days later, I associate that perfume smell with nausea.
Oh.
So that's like, because there's a very visceral reaction to the ghost in this, which I think is different from a lot of other like depictions of ghosts. Is like, there's always poltergeists that knock things off walls, and there's bruises, but like this makes you like, it gets into your body, it makes you cold, makes you nauseous, makes you feel weird.
I associate the smell of warm videotapes with the Super Bowl.
Warm videotapes.
Did y'all have VCRs growing up, right? And you'd run the tape and you'd rewind it like you're supposed to because you are Be Kind Rewind.
I do know what you mean.
And you take it out and it's warm.
Oh,
and you can kind of smell it. Like it's got this very specific warm VCR tape
metally, magnety
smell. Yeah, magnety is a very good way of saying. So I have this very vivid memory of trying to record Anne of Green Gables off of the television set when I was a youth. And my brother, it was Super Bowl Sunday, and my brother wanted to watch the Super Bowl because men, and he turned it off. He turned it off and turned it to the Super Bowl.
Steven.
And so I went back later to get the videotape out, and I remember holding it in my hand, and I could smell it. And my brother was like, "Oh, I turned that off. I was watching the football game."
No.
I was so mad.
But that smell, though.
Now I associate it with the Super Bowl. Every time I don't smell it anymore all that often, obviously, because we don't have VCRs. But I did have videotapes until very recently and a VCR, and I used to smell it. And it took me right back to that moment. Every time I would smell a warm VCR tape.
Yeah. When my mom stayed with me in May for 2 weeks, when Wilma was sick, she bought some perfume in the men's section of Marshall's and sprayed it the entire time. And then when she left, she's like, "You keep this because it smells good." And like, it's not a horrible smell, but I just relate it to like the smell of taking care of a sick cat who'd had surgery. So like I ended up bringing it back to her after Wilma died. I was like I can't. Here's a dead cat perfume. I don't want to smell this. It reminds me. So I think the exploration of, even though it's like a motif, like a sound, it worked for me. So,
and it's interesting that what she did with it was interesting too. So it was a big part of the misdirection of the book because Stella comes to the house and she smells this, or she wears the scent, and she had always understood it to be the scent that her mother wore. And so when they go to the house and they start smelling the smell, it's like, oh, that's Mary's ghost. She's trying to get in there and talk to her daughter, and she's it does not pan out that way. But it was a good way to like for a child to associate with the things that had happened, because she's not gonna remember really what happened.
She was 3,
but she can remember the smell, and it puts her back, and then the smell follows Mary around. It was good. It was a good little.
So I read the book twice. I read it when I first got my Kobo in July, and then I reread it this past week. And there's a little clue in the book when they first meet the commander and Stella, and they sit down to tea with them, and someone says something about the mimosa scent, and the commander makes this comment where he's like, I don't like that smell.
Oh, that's right.
And I didn't remember it, and then when I reread it, I was like, oh, that's interesting. So all along, he's never liked that smell.
Yeah, why wouldn't he like it if it was Mary's?
I'm not sure why, probably because he's kind of mean in the book, but I picture the commander as the shovel guy from Home Alone.
I picture him as
So here's the thing, like, young generations in the past, he was probably 55, so not even old. He could be Paul Rudd's age, and I was just like an 80-year-old man.
He's Paul Rudd.
Brian Cox.
I don't think I know him.
Everybody look him up.
Keanu Reeves.
Oh, no, John Wick.
Oh,
don't
the
talk.
commander?
Yeah.
Can Roderick be Keanu Reeves?
No.
So I was just thinking about...
Or you could be like Bill and Ted Keanu.
Yeah.
I get Roderick is more of a Hiddleston, I think.
I can see that.
Like a very British...
Roderick is not that masculine.
Hiddleston is not the most masculine person.
Get out of my house.
He's Hiddleston.
You know I'm a Hiddles devotee.
Yeah. He's Hiddleston in Crimson Peak.
I haven't seen Crimson Peak.
Didn't we see that together?
No.
Oh, no. We didn't.
We saw that. You and I saw that at North DeKalb.
Yeah. So that movie did an old bait and switch. I thought it was going to be a spooky movie. It was just like a weird, emotional, fucked up drama.
Oh.
I love that movie. I thought it was great.
It was good. It's just, I wanted it to be more spooky. They made more about the house, and it was more about like the people. I
You
think.
get to see his whole butt. Or his butt double's whole butt.
I'll watch it today.
Whose ever butt, it's a good butt.
All I remember from that movie is someone gets stabbed in the cheek.
Ooh. Hi.
It's that's literally all I remember from it. So,
In any
Crimson
event,
Peak is
Brian
not a
Cox
good reference for siblings.
no.
Carrie Mulligan, a young Carrie Mulligan would have been Stella, but she's too old now. Maybe that Fanning that's famous now. Which Fanning is going around? She can be Stella.
18.
Dakota.
What if it was Billie Eilish?
L Fanning.
L?
That's the younger one, I think.
I don't know. So Roddy is supposed to be 29 in this. Stella's 18.
Oh, Hiddles can't be Roddy.
He is supposed to be 29? Does it say that somewhere?
I've read it somewhere online. It could be wrong.
Oh, okay.
But
Well, I mean, that feels right to me. I figured he was about 30 and Pamela was like 24 or something like that.
I think it would work a little bit better and be less creepy if he was like 23.
That's always true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Pam was like 29. So that way, like 23 and 18-year-olds does not bug me as much as a 30-year-old man.
Just the first thing we know about her is that she looks like a child, and then the next thing we know, Roderick is in love with her.
Yeah. So it's the obsession and like the love, and it's just like gross.
I feel like that. I'm not defending it. I feel like that was a common thing at the time. I mean, that age difference.
I mean, she's at least an adult, but like just barely.
It's
18-year-olds then we're not 18-year-olds now.
Yeah. That's true.
And also there is like the thing of the older man,
Yeah.
and it's like the men get to go off to like Oxford or whatever and sow their oats and whatnot, and then whenever they're like ready to settle down, they find a teenager to settle down. Well, I want to ask you guys a question. There's a point when they're holding the mimosa or something. Pamela's holding something, and Roddy's like, Pamela, I imagine everyone with like the transatlantic accent.
Pamela, what are you doing,
like,
Pamela?
Pamela, your hands have gone white. He's like, he said her fingers are waxen. And she's like, what, Roddy? My fingers never go dead. And I was like, what are they talking about? Like, they're talking about it as though it's like a thing. And I'm like, is it like where your hand falls asleep or something? But like, that's not a visual thing.
No,
like another person can't look at your hand and be like, oh, your hand's asleep. Like, what are they talking about?
And I like it. It's like a point of pride with Pamela that her hands never go
My
dead.
hands never go dead. It's so weird.
What are you talking about, Roddy?
And then he has to take her fingers and like pry them off of the object that she's holding because she can't do it.
I mean, that's pretty spooky.
Turned waxen. Yeah, that is spooky.
Yeah.
But they're both just like, oh, that's weird.
Oh, that reminds me that Pamela is just living with a disembodied head of Carmel in her room. I haven't forgotten about that till just now.
Oh, and then Roddy is like, she's like, maybe I was hallucinating. Like, Pamela, that is a scary thing. Like, in a lot of haunting stories, you get, like, people start doubting their own sanity, and that can cause a breakdown of relationships. And fortunately, that doesn't happen here, because the two of them seem to really trust each other. So that's nice. But she's like, maybe I hallucinated. And he's like, Pamela, that's not a hallucination. You saw the picture of Carmel. It could have left an impression on your retina.
Burned into it.
Just, like, burned into her eyeball, which maybe that was like a thing people believed in the 40s. I don't know, but it's so comical. And it's also like his whole like, well, there's no such thing as a ghost. It's just an energetic negative impression left on the house. It's just so fun.
That's what Aristotle wrote a whole thing about how that's how we see things. Is that
Aristotle.
Well, and
the
there's,
outside world makes an impression on your retina, and then you can see it.
Yeah, isn't there like some legend about like the last thing you see before you die is like you could look into the eyes and see it? Yeah, I mean, I know that's like a thing, but it's so funny to hear it from people who like otherwise feel fairly modern to me.
Well, this is also the person who's doing mental gymnastics to convince the women around him that they are not seeing ghosts, and that what they're maybe at most the stuff in the house has absorbed some emotions and it's like leaking out, like at most.
I have a theory that almost every horror movie, horror story, ghost story, a central conflict is always caused by a male character not believing a woman when she says something is very amiss.
They should at least believe the dog and the cat. The dog and the cat make it very clear to everyone that there is something very amiss in this house, and nobody listens to the dog or the cat.
The dog thing is such a huge trope. Like, I wonder if she invented it. Because, like, it's in every haunted house, like Amityville, Conjuring. They're like, the dog usually dies, actually. So
they know what's up.
Yeah. Cat, but here's what I liked about the cat. The cat's like, I'm just not gonna go in that room. The dog like hightails it out of there. The cat's like, it's fine. It's fine.
I'm just gonna stay in this unhaunted kitchen.
So a brief aside to the cat. So Whiskey. I love orange cats, and Whiskey is Lizzie's, or basically Miss Patmore. And she's got a little joke she has about Whiskey. So when she moves into the house, she has to bring the cat. And she goes, I have to have my whiskey whenever I go, night and day. And then the narrator says, she was not tired of that joke yet.
Well, and then isn't it the train porter is like, better hold on to the basket so you don't lose your spirits. Yeah. It's so funny. This book is full of quippy little lines like that. This is a very clever book, I think. And not in an annoying way.
Yeah.
It's like if Dorothy Parker wrote a horror movie. Like that's how, have y'all ever read anything by Dorothy Parker? I highly recommend reading some Dorothy Parker.
It's not as clever by half, but like it's the perfect amount of smart.
I love that kind of stuff. Yeah. Dorothy Parker, that's her whole thing, is that quippy, or one of her things. But anyway, read Dorothy Parker, everyone.
Do you want to go over some of the food? We can stitch this back into the food section.
I feel like the podcast we should just call it Fantastical Foods.
I would love that.
All right. So I highlighted, I think, all the food in the book. I might have missed some because there is a ton.
There's a lot of meals, y'all.
All right. So we start with a delicious meal. Chicken with asparagus and potato croquettes, followed by a trifle on which the custard was still warm, with ratafia, I don't know what that is, with ratafia biscuits lavishly scattered on it. And then they have tea. They have splits, which I think are
That
scones.
was what I was trying to think of.
I think they're scones, because in like the next paragraph, they're like talking about putting the cream on scones. So I think it's a split scone.
Okay.
Splits. What did I put? I put jams and cream. I think that's supposed to be jams. Splits, jams, and cream while the tea trolley stood near. Mm-hmm. Blackened banana sandwiches.
What? Do they don't mean like salty blackened?
Somebody in the UK, help us out.
Maybe that's caramelized.
What is like a bananas Foster?
Yeah.
What is a blackened banana sandwich? Fried potatoes, bacon, and sausages.
Oh, my favorite.
And then, I like, there's a scene where Lizzie's like busy cleaning up and she just tells Roddy to make breakfast for Pamela. So he boils her an egg for 4 minutes and then makes tea and toast and takes it up to her room.
And then the cat gets the egg top.
Yes!
The detail is perfect.
It really is. The house, when there's not an actively sobbing disembodied voice, it's so cozy and bright and everybody likes everybody. It's just like...
There's no cynicism or sarcasm.
No, there's really not. I mean, they tease each other, but it's very clearly like warm and everybody's on the same page. And it's just like...
And they
family.
They even bicker. But it's not like the end of the world, you know? Like, there are some, like, people get tired because they're building a fence or, like, there's been a ghost and they haven't slept in 3 days.
Yeah, they snip at each other a little.
They snip at each other, but, like, it's not, it's going to be okay.
And he always feels bad when he does it, too. He also always recognizes, like, I shouldn't have spoken to her like that. Yeah. And we'll, like, go back and apologize. And she's like, it's okay, we're all tired, there's a ghost. Yeah. And I also appreciate how he recognizes that she had a rough time with their father. Yeah. And, like, that they had a cruel father and managed to be so kind and loving with each other. That's nice. It's nice. More of that. Okay, so they had a Feast of Remnants one afternoon.
Feast of Remnants.
So that's like a leftover buffet, I guess, which sounds wonderful.
Best dinner ever. That's what I was just about to say. It's very best dinner ever.
Salads, trifles, cakes, and sandwiches. Lizzie makes soda bread. When the village priest comes by and Lizzie finds out he's Irish, she's like, flapping all around him with her soda bread. And she's like, I hope you like it, but I do think it needs the air of Ireland to raise it properly.
And then later on, too, they have an Irish guest, and she's like, I can't let an Irishman go hungry.
No, she's like flinging sandwiches at every Irish person in this book. And then Roddy meets up with Stella in the village, and he takes her out for an ice, which I guess maybe is like an Italian ice.
Or an ice cream.
I think, I figured it was an ice cream.
And he has coffee and sandwich for dinner one night. So much coffee. They have a ton of coffee.
Coffee and sandwich.
To go back to the how they bicker, I highlighted this, and I kind of want to live my life like this. Roddy goes, anytime, I said, I'd prefer a fight to a lie.
Oh, yeah.
It'd be better to live that way.
Brutally honest.
We should all live that way. None of us do.
Let's see. There's one scene where Lizzie says, I think to Stella, that she's dishing up dinner, and she says, hope you're not one of them that refuse potatoes.
I got a little sign when we were in Paris that it says in French. I'll translate it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I have a French degree that I never use, and it's worthless, from the University of Georgia. It says, in this house, we only use water to wash potatoes. I guess that means that I drink a lot. I don't know.
Lizzie complains that she doesn't have a fridge. She says, I can't make nice sweets for you without a refrigerator. My coffee cream won't set.
Oh, the clotted cream.
They go stay at a hotel when they go to see their friends, the Careys, who are named Peter and Wendy. That's a running joke, is that they're married and they hate it that they're named Peter and Wendy. So the wife promised, when they got married, the wife promised never to call him Peter, so she just calls him by his last name, which is Carey. So they go see Peter and Wendy, and they're staying at a hotel, and they have a dinner of frightful cold beef, and no sauce from any of the many sticky cruets would make it eatable. They have a supper of baked eggs, toast, and coffee. They must have really high cholesterol.
You know, it reminds me of when I read 2011. It was like one of the coldest winters in Atlanta, and I was unemployed, and I read Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. And that book takes place...
So much coffee, so many sandwiches.
So so many coffees, so many sandwiches. And I remember going to the DeKalb Farmers Market and getting sourdough bread and then making open-faced hard-boiled egg sandwiches and having black coffee. And I was like, I'm living in the book.
I am Scandinavian now.
Then they have heating chocolate, I guess hot chocolate. Yeah. They pour it out and pile on whipped cream. Lizzie makes coffee and rolls.
The rolls sounded so good.
They have tea, sandwiches, and a dish of buttery potato cakes. Yes, please.
Yes, please.
Omelets made by Roddy. Roddy knows his way around an egg.
Apparently it was very fluffy.
And then they have a mixed grill at midnight one night. And
they said,
what happens to people who eat a mixed grill at midnight? And the answer is, they bless the cook and sleep sweetly.
Aww.
And then the last thing that they eat is after the ghost of Mary, they finally have this confrontation, and the ghost leaves the house, but not before knocking over an oil lantern, I believe, which causes a fire in the house. And Roddy faints dead away. He goes waxing. And Pamela puts out the fire.
Yeah, fingers never go dead.
Pamela puts out the fire, saves the day, and then she says, our supper is spoilt. I'll have to scramble some eggs.
Like, immediately, like 1 second after the scene.
They put the fire out. They're like, you okay? Everybody okay? Eggs.
I'm trying to imagine, like, the end of, like, House on Haunted Hill when, like, the sunrise comes up and everyone's alive and just like, eggs?
Because you have to eat.
You have to eat.
Now I feel like I should be eating eggs more often.
I
have eggs. I could eat them.
I have taken to getting my eggs fresh at the farmer's market every week, and they taste so much better, and they're just delightful little protein bombs.
Yeah.
Those are all the foods that I took down.
This is just a fun book to read about food.
I was going to say the other fun thing, this is a little bit English majory, but I really liked it. Did y'all read the intro to the book?
Yes.
Okay. No. About like her... So one of the things she was on about, the author, was this, was sort of women had to live up to this expectation of perfection, right? And so one of the things she does in this book is, as her misdirection, her other part of her misdirection is, everybody talks about Mary like she's this big saint, like she's big, she's perfect, you know, she forgives people, she's, you know, she took in Carmel, who would do that, you know, she's just this perfection of a person, right? And so because they're told this about her, that leads them to assume that Mary is the ghost that's like trying to comfort Stella, that's the good one, and Carmel, the crazy Spanish woman, is the one that's like the hateful ghost, and da-da-da-da-da. And Stella has always been told to put her mother on this pedestal, and that Stella has worshipped her mother because she was this perfect mother and like all this stuff. And on paper, it's true, right? Mary is a perfect mother on paper. And then, but by the time you get to the end, it's like very clear that Mary is only a perfect mother, but out of duty, not out of love. And like, Carmel was the one that had love in her, but she wasn't a perfect woman. And so this whole thing is really just this big meditation on knocking women off pedestals because it's impossible to live up to them, and no one's like that. Like, no one's like that. And if you are like that, there's probably something going on. And I just thought that was a really interesting way to do a ghost misdirection.
Yeah, I read the intro the second time around. I didn't read it the first time around. So the first time, and as we've discussed, I'm not like great with metaphor. I'm just like, what's on the page is what's happening. So I just took it as straight ghost story and coffee and eggs. And then I read it before I read it this time, and another thing that she was criticizing was the Irish emphasis on the family and mother and child, and she was like, meanwhile, we're not actually taking care of children, which is exactly what we do in the United States now with the the quote unquote pro-life, but like, you know, once you get here, sorry, no Medicaid, sorry, we're not going to give you food stamps, sorry, you know, I mean, it's sorry you have a shitty educational opportunity.
Also, we're going to force you to have that baby, but then we're not going to take care of that baby.
We're not going to help you. We're not going to help the baby. So it was kind of like how there's all this lip service paid to idolizing mother and child and family bonds, but there's nothing actually invested in it. And then we see the same thing where like Mary's the perfect woman, and therefore we infer that she must be the perfect mother when we find out there's no actual care given between her and Stella, or from her to Stella. And then Carmel, who's, you know, you would traditionally view her like maybe as a homewrecker, but she's the one who comforted the baby and brought her a nightlight and, you know, petted her and actually loved her and is trying to comfort her even now, trying to comfort her when she's afraid and protect her from Mary.
Yeah.
And it's like such an interesting struggle and battle between them. And like, why does Mary still care, I wonder?
That was what I was ultimately, one of the things I want to talk about is why is Mary haunting the house? So like Carmel, we kind of know why Carmel is haunting the house. Like she was ill-treated by these people, and she had her baby taken from her by Mary, and she comes back, I guess, probably to try and get her baby. Nobody really knows why she came back, really. She was a broken woman when she came back.
I think that's why she came back.
I do
her baby
too.
had been stolen from her.
I do too. So
that makes more sense for haunting.
Right. So she comes back. She tries to get her baby. They basically treat her really, really badly, and she dies of pneumonia and a broken heart, probably. And Mary dies sort of by accident. Like she sort of runs out of the house after Carmel, and she gets swept off the cliff by this tree, right? That gets hit by lightning.
The Whomping Willow.
The Whomping Willow. So like, but I can't figure out why Mary gives a crap. Like, why is she haunting the house?
I think Mary is haunting the house to protect her reputation.
Oh God, that's so dark.
Because Carmel, as a ghost, threatens to expose Mary. You know, they're like fighting. So there's when they have the seance, and they're doing their like makeshift Ouija board thing with their letter cards and everything. And Carmel keeps trying to like jump in and spell out lies, while Mary is saying like, "Oh, I'm protecting from Carmel, protect Stella." And Carmel's like, "No, and I don't know how to spell it in English, and you don't know Spanish, and oh no." And they're like battling over the planchette.
Yeah.
And so I think Mary is like so wedded to her reputation as this perfect woman and this perfect mom that even in death, she's like, I got to protect it. I can't let anybody find out that this wasn't my baby.
Interesting.
God, I buy that. I love it.
I buy that. and Stella's an interesting character in all of this too, because she's sort of on the path of becoming another Mary, right? Because she idolizes Mary. She feels like this is how women are supposed to behave. She's supposed to be very prim and proper. And they talk about sort of the disconnect between how she seems like she wants to be and how she's acting. Like she has this like veneer of politeness and whatever, because that's how Mary acted. And then when she finds out that Mary's not her mom, she gets to be whoever she wants to be.
She's like not that upset too.
Yeah. No, she's not.
She's very quickly like, like a big weight is lifted.
And I think she kind of puts that in there as like a point, like it's okay to just be yourself. Like we shouldn't have to live up to these insane expectations.
Yeah. Well,
and Mary now is freaking haunting a house because she has to live up to these insane expectations.
I think
maybe Mary's a victim.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. Like, I think if this was written today, Mary wouldn't be a ghost. She'd be like, yeah, I just didn't want to be a mom. Like, there's plenty of women in the world that that don't have the milk of human kindness, as Shakespeare would say. Like, and that's okay too.
But then why did she take the baby?
I don't know.
I wonder if, so Meredith, the husband, they said was fond of Stella, and obviously he liked Carmel.
Yeah.
So I think she probably thought like he might stay with them. So she took the baby,
and she doesn't have to get pregnant and like ruin all kinds of stuff.
Like ruin her relationship with Miss Holloway.
Oh, I meant like her vagina, but yeah,
ruin stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think she was just like, no, I'm not gonna. You're not doing this. This is my husband, my family.
It's the ultimate power move, actually. It's like, this is my baby now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what are you going to do about it?
She gonna speak English.
Yeah.
There's like a little bit of like, maybe she's like kind of like racist because she's a gypsy or like a traveling person. I'm not quite sure the right language, but like there seems like to be like a big chasm between the two. So
between the two who?
Mary and Carmel.
Oh, like, I mean, Carmel's a professional artist model, which I assume means she was like a lady in Paris posing nude in a room full of painters, which is like probably cool there, but probably not in like Western England and the little village. Like it was interesting when they talked about Carmel. There's no one is judgmental toward her except Mrs. Holloway and Mary and to a degree the commander. Mm-hmm. But even the priest is like, no, I liked her. She was a nice person. Yeah. She was a good person. I'm happy I got to know her. I'm angry I didn't get to be with her when she died. He was not like, yeah, she posed naked. That's not good. And she had a baby. You know, he was just like, he just liked her. And then Pamela and Roddy too, like not for a moment do they judge her. Like they think she's the bad ghost, but at the same time, like the whole time they pretty much are compassionate toward her.
Yeah.
And what they say, they said, just because she was gay and foreign, and they knew she'd once been seduced, that people treated her badly. And they were just both like, oh, the poor girl.
Yeah, they mostly thought she had just become unhinged at some point, and so that's what led to all the crazy
because
haunting.
of all the abuse.
Right. They weren't like that. She wasn't one of the what was the term about the sluts?
Lazy. Yeah, they don't call her a lazy slut.
Right.
Well, by the way, lazy sluts is a term used to describe the previous tenants at the house.
And how they didn't fix up the house.
Yeah, there's like a lot of dissent in the village about whether they rightfully moved out because of ghosts or whether they used ghosts as an excuse to skip out on the rent.
Yeah.
And so I think it's Mrs. Jessup, one of the neighbors,
Mrs. Jessup.
refers to the Parkinson family as lazy sluts. And I spent a little time like looking up. I was like, are there definitions for sluts? I don't know. And there must be.
Okay. Misogynist moment. Dorothy has interesting thoughts towards women, the author does. At one point, and this reminds me of a conversation that me and Lori had recently. At one point, Roddy thinks to himself, I saw that Stella would be a beautiful woman, even in old age. Do you think... It doesn't even sound like Roddy, really. It's like, is it Dorothy? I don't know.
Well, I also wondered what... I would love to know what in this is her and what in this might have been editing for a general audience. But... Because some of those kinds of things poke out. Like, it doesn't sound like something she would write.
Yeah, my misogynist moment is when their friends are all over for the party and Judith freaks out. She looks in the mirror and sees herself as basically like the crypt keeper.
Yeah.
And she's sobbing. She's hysterical. And Pamela tells her husband, Max, she says, go in and beat her. And I was like, that doesn't sound like Pamela.
No.
And I wondered later, after I reread it and Pamela is at one point basically possessed by Carmel, I wondered if it was some like possession by Mary or something, but we don't there's nothing to tell us that that's what's happening. It's just like very out of character. And the time that she reduces Lizzie to tears for gossiping. But I'm like, first of all, you know Lizzie.
Yeah.
You've brought Lizzie to live here in this house that is scary to her. And she told her friend it was scary. And then it got around the neighborhood, okay. But like, what is Lizzie supposed to do? She doesn't have a sibling in the household to talk to about everything.
And she's a gossip.
And they keep saying that she has a weak heart. We have to insulate her from all this. But then like Pamela's given her this like verbal lashing that's made her sob. And those were two things that felt very inauthentic to the rest of her character.
Yeah.
And those were my misogynist moments.
No, I didn't like generally Stella's character because she's so
very ingenue.
Yeah, but it's more than that. It's like she I guess at the end when she decides to go from she escapes the train station and runs off.
I love it.
And comes to the house.
Like the money in the pocket.
I love it.
That's the only time she ever sort of controls her own fate, right? She sort of...
It's her first opportunity to, maybe.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, I think she doesn't have much personality because she hasn't been allowed to develop her own personality. Her room is plastered with pictures and a statue of Mary.
Yeah.
Who has a statue of someone they know?
Her grandpa is the shovel guy from Home Alone. He's scary.
No, he's Brian Cox. We talked about this.
He's Paul Rudd.
He's Paul Rudd. I don't know. Some things about Stella's character just kind of bug me. Like, she's so treated as so weak with this ghost shit.
Yeah.
Like, she just, like, she can't, like, they're fluttering around her.
But they're
and, like,
treating her that way, and she's like, no, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm fine. Like, let me go talk to my ghost moms. She is very much like trying to take control of the situation, and all she can get away with is sneaking.
Yeah, because half the time they're like, you can't come to the house. We'll lock the doors. Like...
and then her dad, or rather the commander, like, he has such nasty things to say about her when he thinks that maybe she's not perfect. All of a sudden, she's like, she's deceitful. She's this, that, and the other. She's like, shut up.
Because I think some part of him knows. Because remember when he's in his delirium on his deathbed and he thinks she's Mary, and he's like, Mary, did you tell me a lie?
Yes.
Did you tell me a lie? Like, I think he's probably always suspected. Mm-hmm. In which case, she's not actually his biological granddaughter.
And either way, he knows that she's Meredith's daughter. So
yeah.
He's not a big fan of Meredith.
At least one person he did not like.
Yeah, possibly two. Probably the meanest part of this book is Miss Holloway talking about Carmel, and she goes, Carmel was a draggled, hollow-cheeked slut, which is meaner than I've ever heard a drag queen say, and I've heard drag queens say some pretty mean things. Holloway hollow cheeked. I mean, feed her.
She had high cheekbones.
Yeah, don't be jealous. Oh, so mean.
That use of slut, I think we all know what that one meant.
Yeah.
All right, what do y'all have for feminist favorite?
So Pamela is the one who solves the ghost mystery.
Pamela
figures it out.
Yep.
Period is my feminist
Pamela
favorite.
figures it. Yeah, she's also my misogynist moment, so that's confusing. But Pamela figures out that Carmel is really Stella's mother, and that Mary is the scary ghost, and Carmel is the kind ghost. And then when this one gives me goosebumps a little bit when the commander is like, "I'll buy the house back. You can have your money. You got to get out now." And Pamela tells the commander, "If Stella wants my friendship, it is hers. It is not for sale."
Yeah.
Imagine saying that to like a old military man too, for like a woman her age to say something like that. I just loved it. And I have more.
Go ahead.
Pamela,
Go ahead.
Go on
Keep
about
going.
Pamela.
I can only find.
I was going to throw in a Pamela one too.
Yeah.
Pamela puts out the fire at the end while Roddy is fainted dead away.
That was mine, I think.
And then when Stella tells Roddy that she knows that Pamela will have an aspirin.
Yeah.
I really like that. I really like that moment. That's a little
Pamela will have one.
That's a little wink to Cramps. 1944. Wink to Cramps.
That is a wink to Cramps.
She know like all people who have periods will have
painkillers,
Tylenol, Motrin, something.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. I thought my feminist favorite, I think, is how Mama Bear Pamela gets over Stella. Like she's very upset by what she sees happening to Stella. Like she's being sort of stifled by her grandfather, and she's being sent off to this horrible Miss Holloway, and she sort of sees this happening to her, and she feels very protective of her, and she feels like that moment where she's like, if Stella wants my friendship, it's hers, it's not for sale. Like that's sort of a culmination of that whole thing to me. It's like that whole, just her whole dynamic with Stella. I really liked it. There's no competitiveness there. She's not angry that Roddy's turning his attention to Stella. You know, it could easily have gone that way. Yeah. So I just really liked that whole part.
Yeah. Roddy sees that as well. He said that he sees Pamela seeing Stella being stifled by a controlling man in her life, and she's like, not if I have anything to say about it. Yeah. And he gets that, so I like that
And
too.
Pamela's a doer, you know? I like her because she's a doer. She's like, I'm going to do these things at the house. I'm going to do these things for Stella. I'm going to get rid of these ghosts. Like, she's just,
she's a landlady.
Shirt and trousers.
Definitely shirt and trousers.
I only had time to read this book once, but I really think it would reward 2 readings for sure.
Yeah. What was your feminist favorite?
Pamela going through and saving Roddy at the end. Like that's like a classic like action sequence.
Yeah. So that we don't get to see because Roddy was passed out.
Our narrator was unconscious.
The Star Wars Lord of the Rings part is probably the best thing I've ever written in my entire life.
Oh, I have nothing. I'm excited.
Oh God, I forgot to even think about this.
All right,
wait, don't say your shit. Okay, I think I know what I think.
Okay, I think I know what you're going to say too, but here's mine. All right. So Dorothy has weird word choice in this book, and there's some words that I spend a lot of time looking up. But there's one that she uses. The one that she uses not once but 4 separate times in this book is the word jizz. When Roddy is talking about making edits to and improving his play, he talks about tidying up the first act and jizzing up the second. This word, as we all know, is also used in the Star Wars universe as the type of music played by Figure and Dan and the modal nodes at Chalmun's Cantina in A New Hope. That's right, they played jizz music. It is for this reason that I classify the Uninvited as firmly in the Star Wars universe. Jizz band. But also, second breakfast, third breakfast,
I was
fifth
like,
breakfast.
I can't. There's so much eating of breakfast.
Oh, that's true.
And it definitely is a ragtag group of people
Maybe
that
it's
bands together to
It's
fight
true.
the evil.
And they are
so
fellowship and they love each other.
I think there's a case to be made for Lord of the Rings, but I do think you have made a very compelling case for Star Wars, and I can't argue too hard against that.
I will gladly do a tie. So
okay. Good game, everyone. Good game.
Yeah, I love this book. It was really fun.
I loved it too.
Soap stuff.
Oh, everything.
Oh, God.
The mother baby switcheroo.
Just the ghost leading them to the mimosa in the dining room
so
to
soapy.
show them like
Listen, my mom. So finding out that your dad is someone else. That's easy.
Yeah.
That's low hanging fruit. Finding out that your mom is someone else. That's Falcon Crest.
Yeah.
perfect.
That's Dallas.
Perfect.
Those are the days of our lives.
The young and the restless.
All it needed was a robot twin.
Or some amnesia.
Yeah.
Just a little amnesia to really put it over the top.
Yeah.
Hilarious. Yep. That's a good soap stuff. I don't think we can do better than that.
Yeah.
Well, yep. So we all liked it?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I think we rarely unanimously love a book, so that's cool.
Yeah. The only thing that I would say that this probably belonged in general discussion, but like there's a lot of Roddy writing his play.
Yeah, there's
that was a whole thing I wanted to talk about because
a play within a play.
We hear so much about him writing this play, but we never find out what it's about.
Oh, it's kind of like what's happening in the house.
Well, right. Yeah. So it's like this,
like Barbara.
There was a whole thing in the intro about women and ambition and how ambition and women get skewed into something evil or something like that. And then in the play, there's this woman, Barbara, who apparently has she's doing some nefarious deeds to get ahead in life or something. I was like, how does that fit in with everything else?
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, at one point, I was waffling with being offended by that. And then at one point, well into the book, he says something about how ambition is so repressed in women.
Yeah.
So I think he does at least go into it with an understanding that this is something that happens, that society shapes by not letting women explore the breadth of human experience and opportunity. So at least he's not just like women who want to do big things are all evil. I don't think he's coming at it from that angle.
And I guess that fits in with like Mary and Mrs. Holloway and these women who do nefarious things in the book. It's like, well, this is their sphere of influence. If they want to exert control over things, this is how they have to do it.
And unrealistic expectations warp a person.
Yeah. And it's like, and so, yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody.
But maybe we didn't need to sit with him so much while he wrote it.
I mean, it was like line by line. And then on the third act, I changed this. Like,
and then he went to the blue paper to do his edits.
Oh, it was blue paper. I made a note that the first indication of a ghost that we get is in chapter 6, and then the first full-on ghost is in chapter 12. I mean, it is like at the midpoint of the book before we're like, okay, there's definitely a ghost in the house.
He reads the play out loud to 2 separate audiences who give him feedback on how to fix Act 3. And like, it's just so like, funny. Why are we listening to so much of this?
And it's funny. It's like, it's not boring, but it's also like, I'm here for ghosts.
I know.
So I think it still should be there, but a lot of it could be trimmed down.
Maybe it's Roddy shaking his own societal expectations and writing the play he's always had.
I wonder if Dorothy, because she was she was like an intellectual type. I wonder if she like had a long-winded poet or a dramaturge friend that was like, I'm gonna skewer him in this. Because I thought about, so I spend my entire life writing in Google Docs, like all day long, and editing and going back. I've been doing a lot of scripts lately for videos, and the idea of doing edits on paper sounds awful.
Oh, I prefer it.
Oh, I could just like delete sentences and replace, but like if I gotta like copy it out again and then move things around, it sounds like
people who took the bar exam on paper. I'm like, what do you do when you realize you've been thinking about the wrong thing for 3 paragraphs?
Yeah. Or if you want to put a sentence here in the first paragraph.
Yes.
Oh.
What are we reading next, Haley?
We're gonna read some Isaac Asimov. We're gonna read Foundation.
Woo!
And it's become really, I heard some people of mine that are not at sci-fi talk about it being on TV, and I was like, Foundation. And I was like, based on Asimov? And they're like, yeah, I guess. And I was like, oh. So that'll be fun.
Are we going to
read all 3?
Oh, we looked up the page count. We think maybe just 1.
We're going to read just the first Foundation novel.
Okay.
So yeah.
And then we'll decide at that point whether we want to keep going or not.
Yeah, because there's like 2 prequels and 2 sequels, and there's like short stories that were combined into maybe that's what the novel is. It's confusing, but we'll figure it out. We're going to be reading some Foundation.
Great.
So we'll figure it out with you, dear listener.
And if you want to hear something, you can
tell us.
Yeah, let us know. We're on all the social media, and we're hugogirlpodcast@gmail.com. If you're interested in something. I think 3 Body Problem was a listener request.
Yeah.
We take
It sure was.
I mean, I'm already...
you're a correction
I have
corner.
a little correction. I have a sort of corrections corner. I had reached out after we recorded 3 Body Problem to my Chinese friend, Leslie. Hi, Leslie. And asked her to give it a listen and let us know if we needed to correct any of our pronunciations because... Lord knows, Chinese and English, not similar. She says that we did a pretty nice job. The only character that was said wrong, and I'm still going to say it wrong, but I just want everybody to know that we got it wrong. She said the only character that was said wrong was yeah. It's pronounced kind of like yeah, but with more of the short E vowel like in bed. So yeah. So that's our kind of corrections corner. Thanks, Leslie.
Yeah, thanks, Leslie. All right. Are we done?
Yes.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.